Guys, what's happening? So I'm wrapping up some routine maintenance on the Z900RS Cafe and the T120 Bonneville. And I couldn't help but think about some of the comments specifically about the Z900 that were made in a few videos that I had put out, specifically going over the performance modifications to this motorcycle, how this motorcycle gets down the road, etc. And guys, I gotta tell you, some of it was pretty funny. So what I wanna do is I wanna talk about the retro motorcycle segment for a hot minute, and let's kind of get a bit of an agreement of terms, if you will, and then I'll go into the whys behind this Kawasaki that's sitting behind me, why I made the modifications that I made to that bike, how I like to ride it, and how it entertains me to no end. But let's get started. So modern retro motorcycles. Well, you really need to split them up into a couple of different categories. You have a retro motorcycle, which is to say a motorcycle that is built on a modern platform, modern chassis, but it's got some styling of an old school motorcycle. Basically, you get, in this case, a Z900 sport naked bike with a different gas tank and some body work that makes it look like an old motorcycle. In essence, it's kind of like a resto mod, if you will. It just comes from the factory. But the underpinnings, yeah, those are all modern sport naked. Whereas a legacy motorcycle, like the T120, sitting right here behind me, that bike has the chassis geometry and layout of a motorcycle of the era that is looking to emulate, in essence, something from the 60s. It's not built on a modern chassis layout. It's built on an old school layout with old school power delivery. It's meant to give an old school riding experience, but with modern power and reliability. Two completely different ways to go about things. So, is the Z900RS worthy of modifying and taking out and ripping through the canyons? Well, absolutely. It's basically a Z900 with just a different body kit. But is it the most powerful? That was one of the comments that was made that I almost laughed myself out of the chair. It's nowhere close to being the most powerful. At 110 horsepower, I would even venture to say that of the middleweights, it's the least powerful. So if this motorcycle from the factory behind me made 110 horsepower, the XSR 900 and the new XSR 900 GP make 117. That's more than the roughly 110 that comes from the Kawasaki. But it doesn't stop there. The CB 1000, again, kind of that modern cafe style retro, is making 145 odd horsepower, with the GSX 1000 derived Katana making roughly 150. Really, the CB and the Katana make roughly the same at 150. It just kind of depends on the year, I guess. But I think you get the message loud and clear. Not only is this motorcycle not the most powerful, it's not even the most powerful in its own class. Not even close to it. So yeah, there's that. But what if it were to be compared to a legacy bike? What power are you talking about? The Bonneville right behind me will in fact out-torque the Kawasaki. So would the Speed Twin, and so would the Thruxton by that measure, and all delivering up an extremely rich riding experience along the way. Fit and finish is fantastic, and if we're not leaving money on the table here, MV Agusta's got a bike in that Super Veloce. Well, that's pretty sick looking too. And it's making 150 horsepower as well. Guys, that might not be a legacy bike, but it's one that I'm looking at, so I wanted to throw that in for good measure. But the point is this, guys, if you've got a motorcycle and you want to modify it to do whatever you want it to do, go for it. But if you're talking about the Kawasaki Z900RS, saying that modifying it for whatever purposes you want is somehow or another a sin against motorcycling kind, is an absolute freaking joke, especially when you consider the bike that it is looking to emulate. Because back in the day, the Z1 was the darling of the street race scene. I know this firsthand. My dad had one, and he was out there ripping it up every night on the street when he could. So yeah, modifying a Z1 is as American as apple pie, and it's not uncommon for old schoolers to remember that bike extremely well in that environment. Matter of fact, some would say that an unmodified Z1, well, that's just a blank canvas. That's not where you stop, that's where you start. And so that's the mentality that I had with mine. It's built on a sport naked platform. It handles amazingly well. And now with the modifications that it's got, it can hold its own with its a bit more powerful siblings, all the while having that absolute best in class aesthetic to go along with it. So guys, post up your comments. Let me know what you think. I got to get back to work on cleaning these two up. Y'all have a great one. Adios.